Dave Smith had a very good take on this. He was on one of those Piers Morgan, everybody yells at everybody panels, which are really fun for about 5 minutes. But let me send Jamie what Dave said, because Dave had, in my opinion, the best take on this, where it's like you see, you're like, okay, yeah, that's correct. This is the way to look at it, I think.
Is that Dean Cain on the right? No.
Yeah.
It is?
Yes. It
Superman.
is.
I don't know if this is the right rant. I didn't click it from you. I'll click the one you sent if you just sent it.
Yeah, click the one I sent.
Sometimes I love these Piers Morgan panels. You never know who you're going to show up in one of those boxes.
Pictures of Gaza? Are you telling me there were Hamas missiles in every single one of those buildings? That's the entirety of the story? Is that Israel just had to blow up this building, which, by the way, still I don't think would be morally justified. But like, come on, man. Look, like, it's just, again, even to Dean's point, I always find this fascinating because somehow Americans could say this about the people in Hamas and go like, like you said, yeah, I wouldn't like to be kicked out of my neighborhood, but if my government had done October 7th, I'd accept it. Your government, Dean, destroyed Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Somalia, Yemen, the drone bombing campaign in Pakistan. So like, can you get kicked out of your house now? Is it not ethnic cleansing if we were to kick you out of your neighborhood? This is so ridiculous that we impose these standards on these poor people that we would never dream of holding ourselves to that standard. It logically makes absolutely no sense. And it doesn't really matter what Hamas's approval rating is, in the same way that it doesn't matter that George W. Bush had record high approval ratings. That doesn't mean that the innocent civilians of the United States of America are fair game, and neither should any other group of civilians be.
Perfectly said.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, if you could do surgical strikes and do nothing but kill Hamas terrorists, great.
Yeah.
Right? But, that's not the real world. Dave's talking about a world that we don't exist in, right? I would argue. And this is where we would differ. I like Dave Smith a lot, and I think he's incredibly intelligent. But, we fundamentally look at things sometimes in a different worldview because of our experiences, right? And my experience has been dealing with a lot of hostile actors who, you may look at and think, okay, well, can't we just, I don't say we'll get along, but they exist and we exist, and do we really, that's not the world we work in, right? And urban combat is really ugly. It's not dismissing, the horrific nature of it and the fact that, yeah, sure, in a perfect world, it's morally repugnant, and it is, but it's the world that we live in. So I think, okay, on one hand, I get what he's saying, and I don't disagree on that moral side of things. But, from my background, I don't tend to live in that world. I tend to live in sort of the operational side of things. And, you sometimes you have to do things that are not good.
But even as extreme as that?
Well, yeah.
That's the thing. It's so extreme.
Oh, I know. And I don't disagree. And they have, they went above and beyond. There's no doubt about it. But to my point, and I think to kind of what he was saying, look, if we did after 9/11, right, and we went above and beyond, from a proportionate standpoint, and we felt certainly justified in doing it, right? We did. I mean, we did. America finally came together as a group, right, as opposed to sort of the partisan way that we live now. But
we were justified based on a lie, which is even crazy because they used that justification and went after a group of people that had nothing to do with it. Based on a lie of weapons of mass destruction, which is even crazier, right? Yeah. We went to a completely different country.
I don't disagree with Dave. I always like a lot of the things that he says. I just think that we come at it sometimes from a much different perspective. I don't tend to believe that the world is full of good actors who are just trying to create a community of nations.
I don't think that's his perspective either.
I'm not putting it well, but I think what I mean is that it's not. I was having a conversation the other day, and it was about U.S. involvement in a variety of groups, activities, associations over the years, looking to topple governments, looking to change, the direction of a government, all the nefarious things that the CIA has been accused of over the years. And I was like, well, goddamn, what did you expect? Of course, that's what we're doing, right? Of course, we're trying to influence hearts and minds. Of course, we're infiltrating organizations to try to influence the direction of a government. That you go all the way back to the Cold War, right? We were convinced the Russians or the Soviets were going to blow us to hell. Right? Of course, we're going to be doing a variety of things. You want a government over there that's more friendly to you? Okay, how are we going to go about doing that? Right? If that means VOA or Voice of America, or that means infiltrating some organization that's going to try to win them, yeah. So, is that morally repugnant? I don't know.
But you think it's necessary?
I think I think it's understandable, and I think also.
So imagine a world without that.
Yeah.
So if that is a vacuum, and we stop doing that entirely altogether, does that vacuum get filled up by another power?
Yeah. Yeah,
this is the problem, right?
That's the problem, is that we don't live in a world of benign nations who, like, if we're not the police, at the top of the food chain, nobody needs to be there. Someone's going to fill that gap, and you know what? Maybe I'm wrong, but I've been around a long time, and I've spent most of it overseas in unusual places. We make a lot of mistakes as a country. It's a human endeavor, but we do try to correct, and it can take time, right? It can take a lot of time. We make a lot of mistakes, of course we do. But I've seen a lot of players out there, and I'd rather have us and our allies trying to direct traffic rather than some of the hostile actors that are out there.
This is the best case scenario perspective. Worst case scenario perspective is that these policy changes that we are initiating and that we are influencing is for corporations to make more money. It's to control resources and to control areas and to make things friendlier for business. That's the worst case scenario, is this is done in a mercenary fashion.
Yeah.
But is that...
But that's what... that's what
but is that
the Chinese regime...
Sure, right.
That's what... And I would argue...
But here's my question. Is that just what happens? Like, when you do have the ability to control other regimes, isn't it almost... Doesn't it almost logical that you're going to need a lot of money and you're going to need a lot of influence to do that? And so there's going to be a bunch of people that say, actually, we could use some of those minerals. Actually, that natural gas is very valuable.
Right.
Actually, if we could destabilize Russia's energy systems and, pump up Ukraine's and control it, that'd be pretty good. And so then we start initiating things, and we start the coup in Ukraine in 2014 and a bunch of different things. We start helping things along that would benefit us both geopolitically